Thank you, Mr. Steele, for allowing me to make a presentation which will be brief. My ties to Indiana go back to 1816 when my great-grandfather was the first settler in Owen County, Indiana. I traveled around after growing up on a farm and serving in the military during the Vietnam era and became a physician in a little town on the prairie, did another stint with the military to become an OB/GYN physician. After my military career, came to Bloomington to live, work, retire, and die, hopefully in that order, and practice obstetrics. And I'm speaking, Clark Brittain, Brittain. I'm speaking as a physician who's been caring for people for a long time and have been taught to be compassionate. And the story I want to share with you has to do with an adolescent woman that I took care of for pregnancy, who I will call Amanda. She was 17, pregnant, and had a medical condition called myasthenia gravis, which is the same thing that Aristotle Onassis had. She had a little bit of trouble with her pregnancy, and it included a lot of nausea and vomiting. And as a caring physician, I tried to give her medications that would assist her with her nausea and vomiting, and she would take them and report back to me that they weren't helping. And then she kind of quit complaining about it, so I thought that, my last treatment was successful. She delivered a baby at 36 weeks of gestation, complicated by toxemia, probably brought on by her myasthenia gravis. Toxemia is also called preeclampsia. It involves hypertension and some kidney disorder. She was in the hospital in Bloomington and was considered a model mom by the nursing staff that watched her take care of her baby. She was breastfeeding and fussing over the baby and taking really good care of it. At that time, and to this day still, the state mandates meconium testing for drugs of newborns that are born a little bit earlier or have a certain size discrepancy. And that's the passage of the first bowel movement is tested for drugs. She was considered a model mom by the hospital. She went home and was followed by an agency called First Steps, which does home visits to monitor first-time moms and their care of their infants. She was considered a model mom by this agency. Day 9 of life, the drug test from the state of Indiana that was mandated came back positive for THC, or tetrahydrocannabinol, which is the metabolic byproduct of, or not byproduct, but measurable product of smoked marijuana, which was tested in her baby's meconium. And the state, in all its wisdom, came in with Child Protective Services and took that baby away from the mom, placed it in foster care, deprived it of breastfeeding. The baby developed a pneumonia, had to be hospitalized, was kept in foster care for 5 months while the mother completed court-mandated drug rehab, and then she had to actually petition to the court to get back her baby. I didn't think that was really very compassionate. And as a compassionate physician, I started looking at what kinds of things are we doing for and to our patients, and how can I, as a physician, have an impact on that? So I started looking at the medical literature on marijuana and medicine, and discovered a very nice study done in Canada called the Ottawa Prenatal Project Study, which looked at the use among pregnant women of marijuana and the outcomes of those babies that were born to them compared to a study group that had not used marijuana. And short and long-term results were actually equivalent in terms of the neurodevelopment of these babies. So I subsequently, as a member of the Indiana State Medical Association, presented a resolution to the Indiana State Medical Association, a resolution requesting that they petition the state for a medical marijuana act. and was just about run out of the room. I did that in 2002. I did it again in 2004, 2006. Someone else did it in 2008. And I have another resolution before the committee that will be presented again this September. And I would love it if I could go to that committee and say that the state is at least open to the concept of considering compassionate care for people who are suffering. It's a no-brainer. The medical literature is rife with the benefits of medical marijuana, and there's been very little downside to it. So it's time. The time is ripe, I think, for a compassionate response from our state legislators. I think it's time for our Indiana State Medical Association to take action as well. And I'm hoping for a response. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In this topic, THC is the ingredient or the thing that's found in marijuana that produces the effect that people desire. Is that correct? The THC is what makes marijuana marijuana.
Well, there's actually 4 categories of ingredients that are found in the plant. There's literally dozens of resins that are in the plant that have biological properties. THC is the one that typically is considered to cause the euphoria. Right. The medical compounds in the marijuana plant are a different category. CBDs or cannabinoid
Are they
diols.
synthesized in any fashion? Are they capable of being cloned, if you will, in a laboratory, the other ingredients?
Not yet, but people are working on it.
So
in England, there's a compound called Sativex, which is an extract from the marijuana plant that extracts both the THC and the cannabidiols that are medically beneficial, and it's used as a substance that's put underneath the tongue and not inhaled.
But inhaling's a whole nother topic of medical concern. Smoking.
Actually, an investigator at the National Institute for Drug Abuse, a fellow named David Tashkin, has followed this for about 30 years and has been a staunch advocate for not allowing medical marijuana, and came up with a fascinating study recently that showed that people who smoke marijuana, if you factor out tobacco, actually have a lower rate of lung cancer incidence than people who don't even smoke cigarettes.
If you factor out the tobacco?
Yes, sir. So people who don't smoke cigarettes at all have a higher rate of lung cancer than people who smoke marijuana. And that's because of these CBDs that are in the plant have an anti-cancer
I guess
benefit.
I'm skeptical because I've been told otherwise, but that's okay. Medical marijuana has to be, the previous speakers were talking about it, but one of the concerns is that there is no quality control over the amounts, the dosage, and this and that and the other, and that the medical marijuana does include, at least in other areas, smoking and that kind of thing. I noticed in several of the speakers were talking about Colorado, and I have an ad from a newspaper in Vail advertising the medical marijuana of the Rockies. It says doctor referrals available on the site. They have medicine, life plants, and edibles. But it's supposed to be medical, and it doesn't seem to have any quality control. Like if you have a prescription for some medicine, the capsule and so forth, you can read on the label what the quality control is.
One of the problems with marijuana and, for instance, other illegal drugs in general is that there are no quality controls over an illegal market. And by having a legal avenue, people could know how much THC, which is the substance that causes the euphoria, would be in a particular plant.
Without THC, would people use medical marijuana that had THC removed?
Good question. I don't know that anyone studied that, but the medical properties of the cannabis plant that we find useful are the THC isn't that useful for the healing properties that we're looking for. It's the CBDs.
Well, so that the question that was asked me before this hearing was, what would be the consequences of legalizing some kind of medical marijuana without THC?
I don't know that.
In other words, ban the THC, the factor.
I think that's what people refer to as ditchweed in Indiana. And it's from what I know, it's kind of I've never used it. I don't use that stuff, but it's not very much fun to smoke, I'm told.
But marijuana without THC, you're saying that it can be processed for the healing properties of the CBDs or whatever.
Correct. And in fact, one of the medical issues casually related to the medical use of the marijuana plant is industrial hemp, and it has a variety of compounds that are known to be beneficial medically in an other than inhaled form.
Well, industrial hemp wasn't developed to be a medicine.
Correct.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Dr. Dewey, are any of the chemicals that we're talking about naturally produced by the body?
Well, yes.
I thought I saw something on TV the other day. The human brain produces this anyhow.
That's a good point, Senator. Have you ever heard of the runner's high?
Yes.
And it's I presume there's a few runners in here. It's that kind of thing. That involves the endocannabinoid system. And those compounds are somewhat similar to the CBDs found in the cannabis plant.
Next, we've got, thank you, Doctor.